Goodness me. Okie doke. Good. Where is my... There it is. Hey, welcome everyone. I'm going to open our meeting and advise everyone that we are recording the meeting and the video of the meeting is being streamed live via the City of Hobart YouTube channel. I request that all mobile devices be either turned off or put to silent, and in line with our COVID-19 safe plan, you need to sign in to this meeting. And for the purposes of the recording, if you can just wait for me to announce you before speaking. We do have a smaller group here tonight. We have apologies from Alderman Barakis and Councillor Coates. That's all. Yeah. So those two, and I think Councillor Ewan is attending, but he's just running a bit late. So, okay, we'll start with our acknowledgement to country. And in recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the City of Hobart was built. I acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and rights. Moving on to confirmation of our minutes. Someone like to move those? So they're the minutes of our last meeting on the 31st of March. That's moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Alderman Sexton. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. That's carried unanimously. Item 2 is transfer of agenda items. Are there any items that anyone would like to transfer, either in the open or closed agenda? There being none, we'll move on. I have no communications for this meeting, and item 4 is notification of council workshops, and there have been no council workshops since our last meeting. Public question time. We do have a couple of questions on notice from Mr. Lohberger. So I will ask you, Mr. Lohberger, to stand up and ask your questions. Would you like to do them all in one go, or...?
Maybe in sections. There's 2 separate sets, really.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Was the Hobart City Council involved in negotiations sometime around the year 2000 to start selling treated drinking water from Hobart's Bryn Eston water treatment plant for use by irrigators in southeastern Tasmania? And did Taswater or any Tasmanian government department notify the Hobart City Council in or around 2014 or seek permission before expanding that existing arrangement to sell Hobart's treated drinking water to irrigators in southeastern Tasmania for up to 100 years?
Thank you, Mr. Lohberger. In respect of this question of Taswater and the sale of treated drinking water for irrigation, given the age of the actions being back in the year 2000, we will have to take your question on notice because officers will need to do some research to understand whether this in fact happened or not. So we'll take that one on notice, Mr. Lohberger.
Sure. The second part relating to 2014, is that the same answer?
Yes, correct. Yeah,
Right,
we will do some research and get you a full response, which will also be made available to the public.
Great, thank you. All right. We've heard from the Council about the cost of providing the Youth Ark facility for use overnight by the Safe Space Shelter for Homeless People in Hobart. How much does the Youth Ark service cost per annum for the 12 hours per week that it is open during the day? Please include staff salaries, staff support costs, market rent for the building and any other costs accrued by the service and its staff. Is there any reason why the Council offers what is effectively a free after-school hours childminding service when there are numerous other options available in Hobart? And will the councillors/aldermen who voted for the Safe Space lease to be terminated in May this year bear any responsibility for the fate of up to 10 homeless people who will likely be left sleeping outside in winter as a result?
Thank you, Mr Lohberger. In response to your questions, the City of Hobart provides a variety of targeted programs for young people aged 12 to 25. Many, but not all of these programs are run via the Youth Arc facility. Youth programs assist young people to navigate challenges, develop pro-social coping skills, engage in arts, culture and civic life, and access specialist services where needed. The City of Hobart's youth programs team have delivered a range of programs and activities where they have interacted with around 3,900 young people between February and April just in this year. The Youth Arc facility is utilised for youth programs on an average of 26 hours per week. Usage includes skill development, workshops, youth events, sector meetings, so that's youth sector meetings and social and leadership programs. There are also a number of community health programs delivered at the Youth Arc in partnership with organisations such as Headspace, VAPT Care, TASTAFE, the Link Youth Health Service and the Youth Network of Tasmania. The Open Access program engages an average of 380 young people each week. Daily attendance regularly exceeds 120, particularly since the pandemic, the lockdowns have been lifted, and includes young people from a wide range of ages, cultural backgrounds, education levels, etc. Local government plays a significant role in working directly with young people in our community across Tasmania and around Australia. It's not uncommon for councils to run youth programs. And the council is not aware of any other youth centre that provides free social and recreational programs after school for young people in the City of Hobart municipality. There are some additional questions you've asked regarding the budget, some more detailed requests which we'll have to consider and take on notice and provide a written response. And finally, on the Safe Space program, it is fully funded by the state government and managed by the Hobart City Mission. At the commencement of the program in December 2019, the City of Hobart was clear that the offer to co-locate the program at Youth Arc was for a 6-month program, while a permanent location was sought. The utilisation of the facility has been extended several times and will have been operating there for nearly 18 months when the period concludes on the 31st of May 2021. Thank you. So we'll provide that in writing.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other public questions from the floor? I don't think there are. So, petitions. Have we got any petitions?
No, Lord Mayor.
And supplementary items. Have we got any supplementary items? No, there are none. Item 8 is indications of pecuniary or conflicts of interest. Do any elected members wish to indicate an interest in any item on the open council agenda? There being none, we will move on to item 9.1. Now, we are acting as a planning authority, and I'll invite the chair of the City Planning Committee and the Deputy Lord Mayor to introduce this item.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is 26 Fitzroy Place, Sandy Bay, and 2 Montgomery Court, Sandy Bay, for partial demolition, extension and alterations to visitor accommodation, car parking and subdivision boundary adjustment. It's recommended by committee and officers for refusal. So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Harvey. Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, you might remember that 20 Fitzroy Place, which is the site of Bishop's Court, is a very important heritage part of our city. This has been coming back and forth to us a number of times, and in fact there is a live development application for accommodation built into the bottom of the garden, fairly low impact buildings for accommodation. But this development application before us is for not one particular building, but actually 4 individual buildings interspersed mainly on the perimeter of the property of Bishop's Court. As I said, one of the most significant buildings with history to match of Hobart. So the applicant has requested that we approve this, obviously, but it was quite evident that we have 4 reasons on heritage grounds why this is not an acceptable application, and those heritage grounds, usually quite often we will get one reason for refusal, but this is actually 4. So it is considered that the application will detract from the heritage of the site, and as you can see, the proposal does not meet the acceptable solution of the performance criterion because of its incompatible design through its height, scale, bulk, form, fenestration and siting, being adjacent to an historic house and a large garden, and also results in the substantial diminution of heritage values through the loss of streetscape elements, because it's the setback and siting with respect to listed buildings, because it does not respond to the heritage characteristics of the place in its materials, built form and fenestration. And the last one is because it will result in detriment to the historic cultural heritage values of the precinct of an historic house in a large garden. Now, we have heard from the representor, who's a neighbour or has a neighbouring property, who was concerned about traffic in the side street, but that's really not what's considered to be the problem. This is about how the impact of these buildings will be on the main game, which is Bishop's Court. So far from wanting to reduce the impact, the heritage consultant or heritage officer has been very clear as to why this should be refused.
Thank you. Further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman Briscoe?
Yes, look, very briefly, if it fails in a moment, which I don't think it will, this motion, I propose to have an alternate motion for approval. The previous application, which still is valid, has more of an impact than this current application. At the committee, it was revealed that the heritage officer has to consider the proposal when there's no vegetation, and it was agreed by the planning officers at the committee that if we had a vegetation condition, that would be a valid condition. So really it revolves around subjective assessment with no vegetation. So if you had a condition of vegetation at Montgomery Street End, then it would be, in my view, would be a perfectly acceptable application. The Heritage Council has approved. Can I just confirm that?
Mr. Noy.
Lord Mayor, that is correct.
Yeah, so I look forward to the day, hopefully it's shortly, where there's one approval process for heritage, whether it's the council or the Heritage Council, where the Heritage Council are looking after the sense of place, which is Bishop's Court, which is on the Heritage Register, and they have no concerns about it. And yet our planning scheme appears to allow assessment that is contrary to that. So I will attempt to move foreshadow motion if the motion for refusal doesn't pass. It is sad that we had to get to this. In my view, it was very close at the committee, and even you, Lord Mayor, voted against the refusal, and another councillor said it was very touch and go. So I think whatever happens tonight, it will end up in the tribunal. But I think if we have a compromise, in other words, putting a condition of vegetation remaining, I think that's the way to go.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just two questions for clarification. Question number one, with regards to the application that was made in 2014 and this one here, what is the difference between the two? And it is my understanding if the 2014 has already begun and they can still build the 6 townhouses. I want a clarification in regards to that. And point number two, reference was made to the Heritage Council. Now, again, clarification is required. Do the Heritage Council and the Heritage officers use the same methodology or the rules to arrive at the conclusion? Thank you.
Mr. Noy?
Yes, Lord Mayor, the 2014 proposal involved 6 additional dwellings fronting Montgomery Court set into the embankment. That proposal has substantial commencement as a result of work that has occurred closer to Bishop's Court. That proposal was considered under the previous planning scheme and was not considered under the Hobart Interim Planning Scheme 2015. So that's the nature of that application and under which planning scheme it was determined under the previous planning scheme. And your second question related to what Heritage Council, how the Heritage Council determines a proposal. Well, it doesn't assess the application under the planning scheme. They have their own act under which they determine the applications, and they do not assess the application against the Heritage Code under the Hobart Interim Planning Scheme. The officers do, and we're required to assess it under the performance criteria, in particular 13.7.3 of the Hobart Interim Planning Scheme. Thank you.
Councillor Dutta, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, having heard the answers and clarifications for that, I just want to say that I'm strongly supportive of the reasons. I looked at it, at the city planning, I had some reservations. It was a difficult one. I went yesterday, had a look at the place, and the development itself is, it's a good development, but having looked at the criteria, the code, and when I look at the elements of the code alongside the application, it is very difficult not to support the 4 reasons that the officers have used as a basis for refusal. So on that particular ground, I will support the 4 reasons given to us. I think it is quite strong. Thank you.
Further discussion? Can I just ask a question, a follow-up question from Councillor Dutters? Just on the 2014 approval and the 6 dwellings, do you have any sense about what, given that if we reject this, given that's been approved and could be started, do you have any understanding of how the heritage officers would feel about the 6 dwellings as opposed to the 4 dwellings proposal?
Lord Mayor, look, I wouldn't like to speculate which are ones that they would prefer. The simple facts are the 2014 is still a live application because they have substantial commencement. That, in respect to this application, has no real relevance because we're dealing with this application under this scheme and it's the officer's belief that this application does not satisfy the current provisions.
And just while you're there, do we know what the Heritage Council thought of the 2014 application?
If it was approved, then they must have approved the proposal at that time as well.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, and I do hear the advice that this is quite strong from the perspective of the heritage officers, but I'm also mindful of the existing approval of the 6 dwellings, which I don't think would be as good an outcome. I'm mindful of the fact that there was just the one representor, and I think some of that, I think there was just the one representor, is that right, Mr. Noy? Oh, there's 3.
3, Lord Mayor.
Okay. Yeah, and the only other thing that came up during the planning committee that I was a bit persuaded by was the fact that a lot of these dwellings are in Montgomery and Regent Street, and really are not particularly connected to the Fitzroy Place part of the building, and that the building and its garden and its impact on Fitzroy Place is quite well protected. And Regent Street and Montpellier Street are they're pretty much outside the heritage precinct, aren't they, Mr. Noy? They're not really included in because they're quite modern streets, and it's not, the heritage precinct relates to the Fitzroy Place, doesn't it? And obviously the building and the garden, but really in the context of the Fitzroy Place heritage precinct.
You're correct, Lord Mayor, in the sense that it is primarily Fitzroy Place and Star Street and the like, but and you're correct in relation to the vintage of properties in Montgomery Court and Regent Street, but notwithstanding that, the officers would argue that this is still part of the heritage precinct and should be recognised as such.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it is a difficult one, and it is sort of a bit of a borderline. But I think I'm on balance because of that existing approval. I'll probably support Alderman Briscoe's proposed plan, because I think this current proposal may end up being a better result. So, thank you.
Just a question before I sum up, if I may, Lord Mayor, through you to Mr. Noy. Mr. Noy, the height of the active development approval, do you know how it compares to the heights of those particularly facing Montgomery Court? Which I think a couple of stories.
Look, I don't have the plans in front of me. The active permit was built into the ground, so I think it was very low profile. But I don't have the figures here in front of me, unfortunately. What I can say, however, is that the new proposal in relation to the Monty's bunker design is about 5 metres above natural ground level, so will be fairly prominent when viewed from Montgomery Court.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's quite clear from the plans. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I strongly advise. If we're not talking about residential accommodation here. We're talking about visitor accommodation. We've already got an approved visitor accommodation approval on this site, and we have strong evidence from the officers, and if we were taking this to the tribunal, more likely than not the officers are going to win this one, as they often do when it comes to heritage. So I strongly suggest that we stick with the refusal. It's not as if the applicant hasn't got an approval already, and this is an important site for Hobart. So I commend the motion as it stands for refusal.
All right, I'll put the motion for refusal. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. No. All those in favour?
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutta, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan, the Deputy Lord Mayor.
Against?
Alderman Zuko, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe, and the Lord Mayor.
Carried, I think.
That's correct, Lord Mayor.
Okay, moving on to item 9. Moving on to item 9.2, which is 33 Mary Street, North Hobart. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Lord Mayor. This is a proposal for an extension and deck, and it is recommended for refusal, and I'll go into the details of that, but move the recommendation.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Briscoe.
So Mary Street, Lord Mayor, is a lovely little cul-de-sac in North Hobart with a lot of heritage homes. This house is a conjoined house, and it is what seems a fairly innocuous extension and deck, but it does test a number of the performance criteria and probably a number of the representors, 5 of which have put in representations, these neighbours. So development standards, building and work setbacks and building envelope, historic heritage code, and heritage listed site and precinct of West Hobart 2 are the things that it's measured up against. The proposal is for a rumpus room at the rear of the dwelling. The windows currently within the rear elevation will remain. There'd be a covered staircase leading from the rumpus room to the deck. And on top of the rumpus room, which is kind of dug into the very sloping block, very hard to get to the back of the block, there's a rooftop deck above the rumpus room, which will allow direct access to the existing garden, a privacy screen, which particularly facing the property to the north at 31 Mary Street, and so and various other finishes. And the reasons for refusal are again on heritage, but and we heard from we heard various deputations of immediate neighbours who would be impacted upon. There have been some compliance issues with this applicant as well, which I think has been quite difficult for neighbours. That's not what we're considering tonight. However, all of the reasons of refusal listed probably again make a case quite strong to refuse this as well.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 9.3, Deputy Lord Mayor, which is 125 Bathurst Street, Hobart.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, this is for a partial demolition, alterations and new building for visitor accommodation, hotel industry and food services. And
By Councillor Harvey.
I'll move that. Lord Mayor, 125 Bathurst Street is a familiar address to all of us. There is a live application, a development approval for 33 multiple dwellings on this site, but this is not what we're considering tonight. It's for hotel rooms, so it's for nine or over 10 stories really, for 68-room hotel with cafe, restaurant and bars. The building is fairly carefully crafted, set back on this block, and there is retention of the Art Deco frontage, which is now currently Windscreens O'Brien. It shares a right-of-way with a building adjacent, which is 126 Murray Street, which is another site of 5-storey approved development there. And the right-of-way is for, I think, 19 cars to be stacked by a valet through that shared right-of-way. So level 1, ground floor is commercial tenancies and hotel lobby. There's going to be bike parking there, and there is advice to make that bike parking suitable for electric bikes. Level 1 is communal space and 10 hotel rooms. Level 2, roof garden and 10 hotel rooms. Level 3 and 4 have 12 rooms. 5 has public bar and roof garden and terrace. And then there are 8 rooms on floors 6 to 8, and then a rooftop garden and bar and plant. The height is virtually almost three times, I think, the recommended height for the area, which is not dissimilar to the height of the building that was approved, that is a live approval and live for another 2 or 3 years, I believe. So interesting that this application received, I think, again, just 2 or 3 representations. Was that right, Mr. Noy?
Lord Mayor, 6 objecting and 1 in support. So 7
Thank
in
you.
total.
So the representatives brought up issues of overshadowing, particularly the Commons, which is a new residential premises across the road. The modelling that we saw was really suggestive that there would be only a small amount of overshadowing in the middle of winter for the most part. So it's really fairly limited overshadowing, and it was fairly sensitive design that we have before us.
Further discussion? Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I think this is a much better proposal than the previous one that we approved on this site. Looking at the plans, it seems to be much more well considered. The setbacks are more significant, or there's no setbacks from the side boundaries on the last proposal. The use of rooftop gardens and mixed use of the space, the public space downstairs, I think is a very good outcome for Hobart. So I'm hopeful that the proponents of this can deliver on the designs that they've presented to council, because I think it will be a very good addition to the hotel stock in the city of Hobart. And I look forward to the completion of the project, which I hope adds to the vibrancy of Hobart. But I just hope it does get delivered. I will emphasise that they can deliver on the plans that they've put forward today, and I'm happy to support it tonight.
Councillor Ewan?
Yeah, I just had a question because I've just learnt that we are supposed to have 1 motorbike park per 20 car parking spots, so I just wondered if they've allowed any parking for motorbikes within those plans.
Good point.
Noy?
Through you, Lord Mayor, 21 spaces are provided and car parking spaces, and those can be made available for motorbikes as well. Not that I'm aware of, no.
In a car stacker?
You can move.
In the car stacker.
You can move an amendment if you like, Councillor Ewan, because it is in the planning scheme, I think. It is compliant with the planning scheme to have 1 motorbike spot for every 20 car parks, isn't it?
Look, I just need to clarify that point. So, if you...
It's up to you, Councillor Ewan, if you'd like to.
Could we just maybe include it as advice?
Sure. I think we can, sorry.
Yes, I think that's a safer
So
option.
what's the advice?
the provision or consideration be given to providing at least one space for motorbike parking on site.
Okay. So that that needs to be moved, does that need to be moved as an amendment?
Happy to include that in the... No?
I think.
Okay, yeah,
Second, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Sexton. So all those in favour of the amendment of including that advice say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Any further discussion on the substantive motion as amended? No. Did you want to sum up, Councillor Deputy Lord Mayor?
No, that's okay, thanks.
Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 9.4, 19 Ridgeway Road, Ridgeway. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yes, this is partial demolition, alterations, extension, carport and front fencing to this address.
Seconded by Alderman Thomas.
Lord Mayor, this was discussed at committee last Monday, and there were a number of representations, and particularly a neighbour who was concerned about the setback and the erosion of the amenity to their property, and concerned about the a number of things, but also the impact of some trees on the boundary. The application is for this partial demolition and quite a large development, if you like, on the block. The development is to the south, like most of the applications are, or the dwelling pattern is, or building pattern is in Ridgeway, and hence the concern to this neighbour, whose house actually is probably 12 or so metres actually from the boundary to this property. At the meeting, the committee suggested that perhaps conciliation should be tried. We always try and get parties talking to see if there's any points of commonality, but unfortunately that wasn't taken up by the applicant. But the applicant has agreed to, I think, not seal the driveway, and also whilst they aren't prepared to shift the house or the application back from the boundary, they are looking at changing the materials on that side facing the most affected neighbour. So this is suggested approval. It certainly, whilst it is discretionary on a number of points, it is an improvement to the living of one particular to the applicant, and there has been some amelioration of some of the concerns of the neighbouring representative.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. No. Carried. Oh, show of hands. All those in favour?
Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutton, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan.
Sorry.
All those in favour?
Sorry about that.
Zuko, Alderman Sexton, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Dutton, Councillor Sherlock, Councillor Ewan, Alderman Thomas, Alderman Briscoe, the Deputy Lord Mayor.
Against?
Lord Mayor is no.
Okay, moving on to item 10, which is planning statistics. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Move these planning statistics be noted, Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Harvey.
You can see, Lord Mayor, just in brief summary, that we are still receiving development applications. They're still moving along, and there were two major projects approved: 46 Newtown Road, the Tasman Hospital, after a long and tortuous path to an acceptable application, and 10 Edward Street, which is the Philip Smith Centre, which UTAS is looking at doing partial demolition, alterations and change of use to educational and occasional care. And we do see also that it is significantly up from March of 2020. So moved.
Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. And there's also the building statistics,
Yes,
is item 11.
Yes, move those, Lord Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Sherlock, seconded by Councillor Harvey.
And just I might just ask a question of the Director. Director, are we seeing a lag in the building approvals because of COVID, or is it still too difficult to really identify that at this point?
Mr Noy?
Lord Mayor, I think it's fair to say that the residential market, and particularly the apartment market, is very strong at the moment, and that's reflecting in a number of the previously approved multi-storey apartment developments coming online in terms of building approval and commencement. It's also fair to say that the commercial side of the building approvals have dropped off because of the uncertainty in the broader economy at this point in time. But the residential market is fairly strong, partly attributed to the stimulus too by the federal government.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 12 is the Finance and Governance Committee. Alderman Zuko.
Yes, Lord Mayor. This is the Youth Arc, the dance studio. We're going to put out an expression of interest for a section in the buildings. And we just want to get a further report detailing the expressions of interest. I so move.
By Alderman Sexton. Any discussion? There's no discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 13.
Yes, Lord Mayor, Local Government Association of Tasmania, call for motions. There was one put forward at the committee meeting the other day. I put, and then I so move.
By Councillor Sherlock. Any discussion? None. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 14.
Yes, Lord Mayor. Council Policy Manual Review. There was a committee meeting the other day, took a number of policies. There was three that were had quite a number of questions and answers. We're awaiting answers and further reports. So we're moving the three less. We're moving all the council policies less the three that are coming back to a further committee meeting. And so move.
Thomas. Any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Moving on to item 15, which is the Parks and Recreation Committee. I'll invite Alderman Briscoe to introduce this item.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I move the item that's on the books.
Sherlock.
Prior to the Parks Committee, last week we had a briefing from our staff on this item about the draft bushland management strategy. John Fisher and Alan gave an extensive briefing. Interestingly, Hobart City Council is the largest single owner of bushland in our city, although 59% of the rest of 59% of the bushland in Hobart is actually privately owned, and the University and Cascade are the significant owners there, but there is a fair bit of private owners as well. So the draft bushland management strategy comprises of a number of components that, when considered together, outline the theory, principles and assessment of the bushfire risk in the City of Hobart. So really it updates the previous bushland management bushfire management strategy, including putting a bit more theory and principles in to the bushfire management strategy, and also identifies a range of operational actions that need to occur to mitigate that risk. It is proposed to release the draft document for community engagement. During the committee, I think it was the Lord Mayor suggested that we have extra table in it, which might identify or could identify the external funding opportunities the council might pursue, with suggested actions from partner organisations and government agencies could undertake to help with the implementation of the strategy. Essentially, we're not the only one responsible, but to implement the strategy, we have to have everyone working together, including individual landowners as well as all the appropriate institutions, particularly the Tasmanian Fire Service. So hopefully it will be endorsed today to go out to public or community engagement.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. So we'll now move to the closed portion of our meeting. If someone would like to move by Alderman Sexton, second by Alderman Thomas. All those in favour of moving into the close say aye. Aye. Against say no. That's carried unanimously. So that brings to a close our open portion of the meeting. So for anyone watching, thank you for